Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and all people present today. I'd like to take the time, firstly, to thank the Alex Panton Foundation for just allowing me to speak on a topic that I am truly, truly passionate about. So my presentation is Detecting and Preventing Sexual Grooming in the Cayman Islands, a call to action. It aims to shed light on the global phenomenon of sexual grooming and its presence here in the Cayman Islands. So that's a very large photo. It's very aggressive. I apologize. It wasn't so aggressive on my computer screen. I'd like to start by introducing myself. Many of you will never have seen me in this capacity before. I am a newly qualified psychologist. I am Caymanian with British roots, and I have been between here and the UK training for 13 years to be here in the Cayman Islands again as a psychologist. As we know, this presentation is about sexual grooming, but I kind of want to start with, who am I to talk to you about sexual grooming? Why me? My interest in sexual grooming actually started several years ago through working in the UK for a charity called the Children's Society, and I was deemed a child sexual exploitation support worker. I worked with children and young people who were at risk or had experienced sexual exploitation within the Yorkshire area of the UK. I worked very closely alongside police, schools, and social services to strengthen the network around children who are being impacted, as well as to increase safeguarding amongst professionals. Through this work, I began to kind of realize how little people knew about sexual grooming specifically. The buzzword of sexual abuse exists, but what are we talking about with sexual grooming? And my question started to become, are we doing enough, and am I doing enough? How can I help with this situation? Throughout this, I then obtained my doctorate, and my research became focused on mental health professionals' experiences of sexual grooming, with a thesis focusing on how gender impacts detection and safeguarding. So before I really kind of get stuck, I would like to take a minute to acknowledge that this is a sensitive topic, this is a really challenging topic, and I encourage each and every one of you to take care of yourself both during and preceding this presentation, doing whatever you need to be doing to take care. I will be using language of sexual grooming, sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, victim, perpetrator. I will also be providing recent statistics within the Cayman Islands that specifically talk about sexual abuse. So before defining sexual abuse, or sexual grooming, I would like to draw your attention to this quote. This was retrieved from the RCIPS website in regards to a press release that occurred in March. We are seeing a growing issue of adults preying on underage children, more predominantly adult men luring female juveniles from school or after school and away from their guardians and corrupting them in a myriad of ways. We must make it a priority to protect our young people and the vulnerable persons in our communities. This quote both highlights the prevalence of sexual grooming as an issue here in the Cayman Islands, but also places the emphasis on protecting our youths. This presentation is a response to this quote. It attempts to name the issue for what it is: sexual grooming. It is a global phenomenon, and it is not new to the Cayman Islands. This presentation aims to bring awareness to the issue that is ongoing here and emphasis on calling an action of change to better protect our young and our vulnerable. Sexual grooming does not have a statutory definition, and so far, unless I am wrong, I cannot find a legal definition within any of our legislation here in the Cayman Islands. Please, if you know where it is, let me know, because it is impossible to Google. This includes the Children Law of 2012. So based on that, I pulled the NSPCC definition. NSPCC is a UK charity under the name National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. They've engaged in significant work to reduce harm and provide education to parents and professionals around sexual grooming. So their definition is sexual grooming is a deliberate process where someone builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with a child or a young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. Sexual grooming is synonymous with sexual abuse. Oftentimes, sexual abuse cannot occur without sexual grooming having occurred before it. It is considered a preparatory stage, a preparing stage. It is complex, it is ambiguous, and it is often nonviolent. It can appear consensual, and it can appear like a normal adult-child relationship. There is incredibly limited research around defining and detecting sexual grooming on the whole, and Georgina Winters is a US-based researcher who has released extensive research and considerations around defining, detecting sexual grooming, as well as the consideration of prevalence, and also from the opinion and perspective of sexual offenders. I would like to take this moment to identify 5 stages of sexual grooming that they identify within this. So stage 1 is victim selection. A perpetrator might look for a vulnerable victim. This can be someone with incredibly low subjective well-being. They might experience neglect. They might have a distance from family and carers within their life. They may have already lots of ACEs, which I know have been talked about today, and experience possible bullying. Stage 2 is gaining access and isolation. A perpetrator will try to remove close relationships from the child and encourage them to withdraw from family and friends. Stage 3 is trust development. A perpetrator begins to fill a need for the child and persuade them to believe that they are truly cared for, that they are loved, and that this person wants what's best for them. Then we start to introduce stage 4, which is a desensitization to sexual and physical content. A perpetrator may begin to use hypersexualized language or begin to encourage a physical connection. The perpetrator will use manipulation tactics and begin to take control. Then we have stage 5, post-abuse maintenance. Abuse has become entrenched. It is happening. And in the relationship, it becomes further manipulated, and it occurs to make the victim feel isolated, but also in strong need of this perpetrator. Reports and detection are not occurring until stage 5, if it occurs at all. These stages can come in quick succession, or they can be for an extended period of time. Sexual grooming is not limited to face-to-face interaction, or the idea of significantly older men to younger females. Anyone can be sexually groomed by anyone, despite gender, age, race, culture, sexuality, or profession. So despite a clear breakdown of these 5 stages, there remains challenges regarding the detection due to sexual grooming being so different in each and every case. I've tried my best to provide some sort of examples that we may see, but I'd like to say that this is not the case for every single event that occurs. So stage 1, we're looking at vulnerable children. We're looking at someone who may be socially isolated or withdrawn. They may feel alone. They may feel incredibly misunderstood. There is increased risk at being online, where perpetrators are now able to manipulate through online forums. This can occur in chat room sites, Instagram, TikTok, Roblox, Snapchat, just to name a few. Sexual grooming can also occur in a face-to-face setting, and it can be a single, unexpected encounter, or it can be consistent group-based settings. Stage 2, again, it often appears really harmless. It appears like the child may have made a new friend. There has been an exchange of information, and there may be continuous contact through their phone. The child might be secretive about this relationship. This is often because they are being encouraged by the perpetrator to keep secrets. Stage 3, the child may feel like they are being treated special. There may be a monetary gain, such as someone buying them their favorite snack, all the way to someone buying them a new phone or giving them money for gas if they are 17 years old. If a child experiences feeling invalued and feelings of being different or unaccepted, here has someone that has entered their life that tells them that they are accepted and that it's okay. Then we get to stage 4, which is incredibly sinister. There's an increase of manipulation. The offender may start to ask questions of a sexual nature. They may encourage sexual conversations, pictures, or actions. They may look into physical contact and begin to manipulate with talks of, if you loved me, you would. Then we get to stage 5. Abuse has occurred and it has increased. Extreme manipulation occurs and a child is made to feel like there is no way out of this situation. An offender might say no one would believe them or that this behavior is all out of love. The offender may take away phone, take away contact. There may be physical, emotional, financial, and sexual abuse all occurring in this stage. These stages, they show possibilities, but they also show the difficulty of detecting sexual grooming. Here we are within the first 3 stages where it just seems like someone genuinely being caring. Of course we want to let our children know that they are accepted, but perpetrators will often have another opinion, and again, that secrecy is where it becomes incredibly held. So detecting sexual grooming is a difficult process, but it is part of our safeguarding duty. It's something that each and every adult within our society has to uphold. There have been very few studies completed on people's ability to detect sexual grooming, but those that do exist highlight the difficulty and suggest a high level of errors. Even with standard safeguarding training, individuals continue to struggle to detect sexual grooming from various scenarios and at different stages. This difficulty, again, is probably due to the complexity and ambiguous nature of sexual grooming. I just want to take a moment to think about our cognitive bias in all of this. Detecting sexual grooming is a cognitive process. We can't put it into a computer and it generate an answer for us. It is a subjective process. As practitioners, as adults, our experiences impact our ability to detect. These experiences can be deeply entrenched or from training or time worked. We all hold a cognitive bias that impacts our ability in detection. There are 3 cognitive bias theories that I'd like to highlight. Before I really go into it, I want to talk about what a heuristic is, because that is on the board a few times. A heuristic is a mental shortcut. It's something that we all do. Our brain can automatically jump to make certain decisions at an unconscious level. For those of you who are drivers, you may know that sometimes you slam on those brakes and you didn't even realize why. That is a mental shortcut. That is a heuristic. We are unconsciously immediately doing that because we have made a decision in a split second. Availability heuristic is about using social judgment to make decisions. So our preconceived ideas are developed through our social world that helps us to make decisions. Society might tell us that sexual grooming is heteronormative. But when we think of sexual grooming, we may think of an older adult male and a younger female. But are you thinking about that 21-year-old male grooming that 16-year-old female? Or are you thinking of a 16-year-old male grooming a 16-year-old female? If I mention a male to be grooming another male, are you automatically thinking of a significantly older male and a significantly younger boy? Or are you thinking of that 24-year-old male who may be grooming that 15-year-old male? What about female to female? Have you ever considered that sexual grooming, because it's despite gender, could be occurring between a 24-year-old female and a 15-year-old female? Or are we remaining heteronormative in our stance? Affect heuristic uses our emotions or our gut feeling to decide. We might not walk down that one road because it's dark and darkness tells us that that's dangerous. We might report that suspicious relationship because our emotion, our gut feeling tells us that something is not right. I then want to bring kind of a closer look at error management theory. This is the idea of uncertainty, making decisions when we are not sure. Based on this theory, they believe that if we are uncertain, we are more likely to make false negatives. That means we are more likely to think it is untrue. We are more likely not to report because we are unsure. I'd now like to take a moment to consider the sexual grooming statistics and sexual abuse statistics here in Cayman. These were not easy to find, but they do exist and they are out there in public knowledge. Sexual grooming, as I've said, in the Cayman Islands is not a new phenomenon, but it is an under-recorded phenomenon. There are incredibly limited recordings of sexual grooming specifically within our reports that are released, but there has been an increase of recording around sexual abuse since 2019. Sexual grooming, when looking in the RCIPS crime and traffic reports, they often have averaged 6 to 9 cases per year. However, within the RCIPS report, it's important to note that they say that they only include substantiated primary crimes, which means that if sexual abuse occurred, that is the primary crime that is mentioned, not sexual grooming. So due to this and the challenges that I've faced with looking at the crime reports that exist, I started to consider statistics from RCIPS, MASH, and the CISD US 2022. I haven't had my hands on the 2024 yet, but I am very interested. Firstly, in 2023, 1,799 child safeguarding referrals were made to MASH, and 16% of these were of a sexual nature. According to DCFS, 281 referrals were specific to child sexual abuse. And yet, what I'd like to highlight is that in 2023, of 89 sexual offenses recorded by the RCIPS report, 35 of those involved youth. And to further confuse matters, it states very clearly in the RCIPS report that including youth also includes perpetrator and victim within the same breath. So we cannot say whether these youths are victims or perpetrators. And so I ask you to think, if in 2023, 281 referrals were specific to child sexual abuse, why are only 35 that could be either perpetrator or victim, why are only 35 within our crime report? That's saying that these crimes are not substantiated. They are not proven enough to be considered and taken in by our police here. I'd also like to highlight that in 2021, of 90 sexual offenses, 56 of them involved a youth. That is more than 50%. And that is very common without the past 5 years. I'd also like to say that in 2022, 52% of recorded sexual offenses took place in a residential location. These are occurring in the homes of people that we know, and that may be people that are in the knowledge with our children and in the same area. So the point is, in all of this, is that we need to do better. I have gone on and on about this topic of sexual grooming. I've told you about the stages, I've told you about the difficulty detecting, I've told you why we might struggle to detect this. But at the end of it all, it's about doing better. As earlier mentioned, sexual grooming is the preparatory stage for abuse to occur. Too many times we are not detecting or reporting until that abuse has already occurred, and by then I'm saying it's too late. What if we were able to detect grooming as it was taking place and prevent the abuse and maintenance of this abuse from taking place? Detection is tough, I agree. I don't sit here and think that this is an easy feat and we all just need to figure it out. But I don't believe it's impossible. So what can we do? As professionals, we need to start to consider our biases. We need to consider the things that we inherently believe or don't believe that get in the way of detecting. We need to start thinking of how can we reduce our biases. Our ability to detect may be limited for a number of reasons, and the best place to start is your own internal reflection. Time and time again, I hear professionals worry about the therapeutic rupture. What if I'm wrong? But what if you're not? Therapeutic ruptures can be rebuilt. They are challenging, but they can be rebuilt. An open and a transparent environment for both parents and child around your decision-making can be effective. As parents, it's important to start to be aware of your child's relationships, but also to promote healthy, open conversation. Are you talking about consent with your child? Are you talking about consent with your child from the age of 2? Or are you waiting until they are older when abuse could have already taken place? Are you talking to them about what a healthy relationship might look like and the idea of manipulation of if you love me, you would should never exist in their life? As a society, we need to reduce the silence. I wish I could scream that all at you. We really need to start talking about this topic. We carry an element of shame that reduces a desire to speak out. Perpetrators thrive in silence. We need to improve our recording of sexual grooming. We need increased consistency and transparency to determine how and why exploitation and grooming may be taking place. By consistent recording and public sharing, we, as people, can begin to reduce the silence and recognize the risk that exists within our society. Victims of sexual grooming and sexual abuse deserve to be heard. On average, it takes 26 years before a victim comes forward about their abuse in childhood. If we can open the conversation, we can reduce shame associated with it. We can encourage children to find their voice and speak out about the experiences and understand more of what sexual grooming might look like. To align with speaking out and this presentation being called a call to action, there are some things that I believe can help steer Cayman in the right direction. This is not to say that what we are doing is wrong, but it's that we can do better. First, we should have an increased public recording, categorization of suspected grooming, exploitation, and abuse. We should have increased training around sexual grooming specifically, providing individuals with knowledge and skills of what grooming may look like to encourage detection. As practitioners, there should be space for reflection. When something occurs and a crime such as abuse or grooming, are we meeting as professionals and asking the questions, what did we do wrong, what did we miss, and how can we do better? Finally, I believe there should be increased research that considers perspectives and stigma that already exists here in Cayman around sexual grooming, as well as research on the biases practitioners may hold that impact their ability to detect. I'd like to finish this presentation with a final question. Are we doing enough? Are you doing enough? Am I doing enough? The aim of this presentation was to promote thought. It was to welcome us to question our own knowledge, awareness, biases, and to begin to ask, what more can we do in an aim to make changes for the better for the youths of the Cayman Islands? I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I appreciate the opportunity.